welcome everyone, and happy Thursday. Hope everyone has had a wonderful week. But welcome to tonight's authors conversation, stories of a colorful world. I am Vanessa Mitchell, along with Kanika Mobley, and we are the co-founders of Stories of a Colorful World. And so again, we always like to welcome back our visitors, but if this is your first time, we are an online children's bookstore. And we focus on carrying children's books that feature BIPOC characters and of stories written by BIPOC authors. And so for us, diverse representation is important, but not only diverse representation, but also the authentic voices that tell those stories. And so we love this series of our authors conversations because it allows us to speak with authors who have written these books, and it gives them the opportunity to talk about their experiences, their journeys into becoming authors, their projects and books that they have out and that are working on. And we get to hear some of their advice for aspiring authors. So in the spirit of celebrating Latinx heritage, because this is September, we are so happy to have with us Meg Medina, award-winning author. And Meg is the author of Evelyn Del Rey is Moving Away and Mango, Abuela, and Me, two awesome books that we love that we also have in our book collection. So we are very excited to have Meg here. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. So we like to make this a very easy conversation. So I'll just turn it to you and maybe ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Well, first, thanks. I'm really excited to be here, especially during Latinx Heritage Month. I'm Meg Medina, and I write books for kids of all ages. I write books for teens sometimes. I have Burn Baby Burn, Yaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass, Girl Who Could Silence the Wind. I write middle grade, the Mercy Suarez series. Most people know me through that one because Mercy Suarez Changes Gears won the Newbery in 2019. I think I have it, my big poster behind me. And then, and I write picture book, which I never thought I would write. I had no idea how to write a picture book when I first started writing. My very first one was called The Aisa Wants a Car. But like as I was learning and sort of teaching myself how to write them, I was figuring out that they're sort of poetic, right? You're telling a big story with very few words, and they're words that have to really like cling and be evocative. They just have to create emotion and a sense of place and belonging inside the story. So anyway, that's been a really unexpected thing that I never thought I would do, write picture books. I always thought I had to be an artist to do that. But it's been one of the joys of my career so far. And Evelyn Del Rey is the most recent one. And that was just a blast. That was fabulously fun to write. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I love how you speak about writing and your books. So as a child, like, were you drawn to reading or writing?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the way it happened is that I was really drawn to story. And so my family were cuentistas, really. It was oral storytelling. My grandmothers, neither one of them was educated. My grandmother, one went to school until the 6th grade, the other one until the 8th grade in Cuba. My mother's generation, my mother and her sisters were the first generation to go to college. My mother did it through a correspondence course. Like she'd go, they'd send her the materials to her town in Cuba, and then she would do the work, and then she'd present herself in Havana twice a year for her exams. But anyway, when Cuba's situation changed and the Cultural Revolution happened, there was an exodus of people. My parents were among those people. And what happened is that families broke apart in many ways. They broke apart politically. Some family members really supporting Fidel Castro, other family members being opposed. But they broke apart with physical distance, right? Because when you left the island at that time, certainly, it was like a radical break. You weren't allowed to take your photographs with you, your belongings with you, nothing. Everything had to stay there. It was a very violent, feeling that if you were leaving the country, you were betraying the country. And it was this really painful process. So what people do with pain is really interesting. And often they make art out of pain, or they make beautiful things out of pain. And my family made stories out of their pain. So as a child, when my grandparents, when abuela and abuelo came, and my tias and everybody, and I started to have relationship with them, there were stories and stories and stories of life in Cuba. There were stories of the neighbor, of the chicken that did so and so, of the parties, of the time they went to the parade and did this, about, and it was all so different. You guys are from New York, so right? I'm from Flushing, Queens. What chickens did I see there, or any of those things, or mangoes with the juice flowing down? I had no idea what they were talking about, but the way that they told these stories was so magical, especially my grandmother, Vena, who was just intrinsically dramatic, right? She'd be there. I still remember she smoked, right? And so she'd be there, and I'd say, Abuela, can you tell me a story, right, after school? And she would say, you want a story? ¿Quieres un cuento? I'll give you a story. And then she'd tell me in gory detail, the hurricane of 1933 that wiped out her village, and bloated bodies were in the street, those kinds of stories. You would never tell a 5-year-old. It's what in what universe does that make sense? In my grandmother's universe. Pero here's the thing about that. In telling me those stories, I think that they were working out for themselves a memory of who they had been. Because here suddenly they were immigrants, they were voiceless, they were quite literally penniless, right? They were cut off from family and from structures that they understood. And so this art form, this storytelling, was a way to connect themselves back to who they were, their identity. And the plus ended up being that it connected me to my roots, right? It connected me to this idea that my family was bigger than just, apartment 1E in Flushing, Queens, right? That I had come from people who loved me, who rode bicycles to work, who did this and that and the other thing. And I don't know, I think I just developed the ear for listening to the emotion in a story, for listening to the shard of sadness in a story, even if a story is funny or light. And that feeling of being trusted with a story, of being told a story with love. I don't know. I think I absorbed that. And I think some of that I try to put in my own thinking as I work through a story for kids.
I love that. And what so resonates with me is my grandparents are Jamaican born. So my parents are first generation Americans. And even as an adult, sitting at the table, listening to my grandmother tell the story of her childhood and growing up, and how vivid those stories were, riding a horse and things that obviously I'm not riding a horse, here.
Right.
Kind of hearing the stories and how vivid, and then you can kind of picture what that life was. And I did it certainly as a child, but definitely as an adult, and still being kind of enamored by the stories she would tell. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it connects you to your culture, to your ancestors, to everything that happened before that made it possible for you to be here in this moment, right? A lot of beautiful things happened to make that possible in my own life, and a lot of really hard things happened for people. to make that happen in my own life. And so that's the incredible part, I think, people's journeys. And certainly in the Latinx space, right? There's so many of us who have come, whose parents came, whose grandparents came, who came themselves, right? We've come, we're the people who've come in this mix of hope and pain, right? To for a better life, for an opportunity, for something that drew us here. And it's that intersection, I think, of what came before, the good and the hard. And I think that ultimately grounds people. It gives them a sense of themselves, like a deep sense of themselves, and a sense of pride in who you are, a knowledge, a self-knowledge, which is, I think, really essential for kids.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Did you, so you love the stories and writing the stories but did you know that at a young age that you wanted to write and to be an author?
No, I knew that I was fairly good at it. And the person who made me know that was Mrs. Zuckerman in the 3rd grade at PS 22. Wherever you are, Senora Zuckerman, I still owe you, because I was a lot, right? I was a lot. I was always in motion, right? I was always outside. I was running. I was interested in everything. I was very hard to pin down, right? Very different from my sister, who was very an inside sort of person and very bookish and so on. I was arrebatada, as my mother would say. And so Mrs. Zuckerman was the first one, I think I was in 3rd grade, who wrote on a paper that I wrote that I was a good writer. And today I'm in my late 50s and I still remember the words that she said to me, and I was 9 years old, right? That it's 5 decades, right? That this has stayed with me. And I think that's an amazing thing. Like, she was the first one who said to me, you're really good at this. I enjoy this story. And it changed everything. It changed everything. This one moment that maybe Mrs. Zuckerman didn't even realize was important, which I think happens to teachers all the time. They have a million moments. They don't, and sometimes they're good moments, and sometimes they say something that stings a child, right? And does the opposite. Pero let's think positive for now. Mrs. Zuckerman was the positive one, right? And she was really terrific that way. And it changed everything. Like, after that, like, I had courage. I had courage to, write for the paper the school paper when I was in high school. They gave me, get this, I know like nothing about sports. I was the sports writer for my I was probably talking about their uniforms. I don't know. I got to find some of these old papers from my high school to see what the heck I wrote, because I don't even understand the rules of half the game. So, I don't know. But it gave me courage. It gave me courage to do it. And then in college, I started to, I went in like a lot of college kids do, or a lot of people who like English, right, as a topic, thinking that you're going to write, like some, the quote unquote great American writers. Well, who were the great American writers in the canon when I was in high school, right? Right? Nobody who looked like me or who came from a Latino background, right? So in the beginning, I thought I had to write like a very polished white lady from, upper society or something, or that I had to go to Harvard, or that I had all these ideas of why I couldn't be a writer.
Right.
And it took a while in college, and it took seeing House on Mango Street, and it took a while of like getting my reading expanded to see that your life, whatever it is enough,
right,
material to make observations about life, to have an opinion about what's happening in your own life, to turn these things into art. But that wasn't automatic. Like, I had to find that out the hard way. And so when I write for kids now, that's what I'd like to spare them. I'd like them not to have to wait to get to college until they really feel like they are seen, that they're there on the page, that their story matters. And luckily, I mean, now it's nowhere near enough of the books that we need for all the different kinds of kids who are in our schools now, nowhere near, but it's better. Every year it gets better. And so there's a lot, like in Latinx community, I just see every year there's more authors coming to the table, more exciting voices, more countries represented, more experiences represented. And that makes me hopeful. You know, that's, I think, what we most have to do with kids, like offer them a window into the world that they're living in, right? That is complicated and beautiful and filled with many people. And allow them to have those experiences in books that also translate and make easier their relationships in their classrooms and in their communities, and hopefully like when they grow up in their adult life with others. Yeah. But you know, it's it's harder than it sounds, that I'm making it sound, but I think that's my theory and I'm sticking with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it definitely is that authenticity that kids are looking for, and they want to feel connected to the books that they're reading, which is so powerful. And so like, as you made that transition into like, okay, I think I need to be this type of writer, but then really finding your voice, how much of yourself or your experiences do you bring to your work?
Oh my God. I am a dangerous person to know. That's all I'm going to tell you. So, because you will be recycled into some character. You might be a different species. I made one of my mother's old hairdressers became a dog in Yaqui Delgado. But yeah, I mean, it's all kinds of things that I do, but I can't help it because I'm noticing people, and I'm noticing the feeling that they create in me. I am noticing the ways that they are spectacular and wondrous. And I'm noticing the ways that they are broken and bitter, like all of those things. And so are kids. They have fewer words perhaps, but they know, you know, they have a sense of people. They have eyes, they have ears, they have feelings. So I put it all in. I do a lot of work in memory. In fact, today I was working with a school, Aspida Academy in Delaware. And I was working with the students, you know, remembering a toy or a game, their favorite from when they were like in first grade, right? And I had them visualize themselves. Who was your teacher? Who was your friend? And we went on and on and on. And then they did a writing piece. We had a little assignment. And as usual in this experience, right? What is unexpected is when I ask the children and the adult people who are also writing with them, their teachers, why do you remember that? Why do you think you remember that? So what I love about that moment is that it is an offering for students to self-reflect. And that's what we want in people. We want people who pause and reflect on why they think a certain way and why they feel a certain way and why they do a certain way. It's, you know, we want that self-reflection piece. We don't want people just sort of moving through the world blind. And it always, you know, it always happens, and did today, that it calls up sudden, unexpected feelings in people, especially if they've remembered like a person that they miss from their life, or something that happened that they, you know, that hurt them, or anything like that. And it's powerful. I think memory is really powerful, and what you've lived is really powerful. But it's not only like remembering, oh, I'm going to put that kid in second grade who had the broken teeth or whatever. I'm going to put a kid with broken teeth. It's like, so why do you remember him? Okay, I remember him because so-and-so used to tease him. And then it gets wider and wider. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you start to really ask yourself, why do I remember the things that I remember? And then as an author, you decide, what do I know about the world now at this point?
Right.
And what do I want to bring back to children? How do I want to represent this so they can stop for a second and self-reflect and think about their life and, grow from the experience? And it's tough because what you don't want to do is create books that have these moral lessons, right? Like, I'm going to teach you about this, right? You can never come into it like that. Like anybody who's parented a kid knows, you can't, forget it. It's not going to work. So what you have to do instead is be honest, really honest, and draw the world as it is and give them this sliver and trust them to read and to come to you with questions and to think. That's really what you want, I think.
No, that is right. That is right. One of the things that stands out about your books is the presence of the female characters and the lead female characters. And so, and also that you celebrate Latinx culture in your books, right? It is celebrated and, so why was it important for you, or why is it important for you to have females as the lead characters, as strong characters, but also pulling into your multicultural background?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you for asking. All right, so I think in my own life, there were very few men as I grew up. My parents divorced, so I was raised by my mom and my aunts, and so on. My grandfathers both died early. So I was raised by a rangy pack of women, right? All of us, all storytellers, some a little neurotic, some a little controlling, some a little hot-tempered, todo el mundo, right? Everybody was in there. And everybody was in your business, right? Raising you in the community way that we raise people, typically in Latinx family, right? And so there was something really beautiful about that. Like if I had said to my mother, you're a feminist or you're a strong woman or whatever, I think she would have just run from the room screaming, because, in her mind, like the thing she wanted most from me, to marry a nice man and have, like, my mother had very, very traditional sorts of thinking. And yet here she was in New York City. Her husband had left. She had 2 little girls. She had to take a factory job. If something broke in the apartment, she had to go to Woolworth and get the cheap tools and figure out how to fix it herself because the super wasn't coming, et cetera, et cetera. My mother figured it out, and my aunts figured it out. And they were nervous ladies, and they were quote unquote powerless, and yet they inside had the power to survive. Right? They were everything. They were everything. And so I love celebrating the strength of girls, and especially in Latinx culture, where traditionally there's been like a lot of machismo and so on. Like I like to blow right past that and celebrate these strong women that I knew, and I love that. And as far as centering on Latinx culture, the issue is this: there's not enough books. That's the first thing. And I feel like we need the range of stories. Like sometimes I'm writing, especially in my YA, has difficult family circumstances in there, really difficult. So there's that kind of family. There's families with economic need. Like in my Mercy books, it's really a healthy family that's facing a grandparent's illness together, but it's a healthy working family. In Evelyn and Mango, it's also, some in Daniela lives with her mommy, but Evelyn lives with her mommy and a papi and a cat, right? Like different versions of family. But it's important to me that we show all of that. And then also, here's the cover. I don't know if you could see it. So you can see they're Latinx girls, both of them, and they're different shades, right? And that's a misconception that we run into in Latino culture all the time. So we're everything, right? Black Latino, white Latino, Asian Latino, like it's everything in every economic strata and so on. And so I wanted these girls in this book to look different and still be Latina, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like my books, I've written many, I think 8, and so it's still just a piece of the story.
Yeah,
like I think there's so many more stories, more countries. Like my books are very centered in Cuba and Cuban Americans, because that's my background. So I'll have Cuban characters, sometimes I have Puerto Rican, Dominican characters, the characters that I knew most intimately. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited when I see books coming out that feature Peruvians, Guatemalans, Salvadorans. Like, bring it, bring it. We need it all to understand each other. So, it feels exciting to me to be able to bring books forward, but I'm also always aware that I'm bringing, a piece of the story. Mm-hmm. I'm not bringing the whole story, and I'm always reminding people of that, especially in Hispanic Heritage Month, right? our 1 month where we get the mic, right? That every month is Hispanic Heritage Month. People wake up, and that it's a really wide group, and we need to read it that way and understand it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. That almost ties into, so we always every month have a different theme of the month. And so our theme for September was cultural diversity, and it was centered around, Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month, because we don't know, many people don't see like the diversity of Hispanic Latinx people, and how many countries are represented, how many people are represented, in customs and voices that there are. And so how do we also celebrate that, there are so many stories to be told, and so many authors who are telling so many different stories, under the umbrella of Latinx.
Yeah. Well, this is why I think your bookstore steps right into that sort of space. That's a good thing. That there are increasingly places where people can turn, because in the beginning of my career, people would often, librarians, lots of people, where can I get lists of books? How do I find books that feature Latinx people, and et cetera? And so I feel like more and more people stepping forward that have expertise, right? And lots of groups. There's Las Musas, there's Latinx in publishing, there's lots of places where people can Latinx, and Kidlit is another good sort of blog. And I've always got my eye on these places for who's up and coming, what are the new books coming out. I think it's just keeping your ear to the ground, because it's so many new voices are coming. That's the best way, I think, to just sort of get that kind of information.
It's interesting that you were speaking at Espira in Delaware, because one of our independent authors actually works at Espira. And
no kidding.
Yes, so she has a couple of children's books, and one of them is the Afro-Latino alphabet.
Mm-hmm. I remember her from last year, because I did some work on Aspira last year. Oh, I hope she's watching. Yeah, and traditionally, I have to say, I am not independently published. I came through the traditional way, but many, many, many BIPOC authors have come through publishing, through independent channels, because for so long, there were so many obstacles and things blocked, right? You couldn't get through. I would also say, there was a time when independent publishing, it could be spotty in terms of like the quality and so on, but that has improved massively. So I think now that that's another place, right? That we can be looking at and considering titles that come from all sources. Yeah, that's so fun that she's from Aspida, and that's where I was this morning, Aspida. It's a wonderful place. It's just terrific. So, yeah.
I love that.
So for your journey in writing books, and what has been sort of the sweetest moment or the biggest joy in this journey all the way through today?
Oh man. So I think like it depends on how we're going to define joy. So like professional joy, right? Like that the feeling that you've made some sort of successful moment. I would have to say was receiving the Newbery Award was really sweet because, you know, Pam Munoz Ryan, Margarita Engel had gotten the Newbery honor, and Matt de la Peña had gotten the medal. But I'm the first Latina female who got the medal for Mercy, and that felt like, in some way, like we were broken. Like I don't want to be the one who won that. I want to be the first one of many others who are going to come behind me, and that felt sweet. And it changed. It's a life-changing moment, honestly, in your publishing life. And I had the privilege, we weren't in COVID. So I think the last year that ALA had like an in-person kind of thing. And I got to come into that big hall with those hundreds and hundreds of librarians who read work with great love and passion. And I was in a room with friends, with publishing friends, with my family. And it was really beautiful. It was a beautiful moment for me. I had present inside of me Abuela and Tia Isa and my mother and everyone in that moment. I even when I think about it today, I still get emotional. It was very beautiful. Yeah. But I think the long-term joy also has been the sense of like community with other authors around loving children, around wanting them to grow up healthy and to be, sort of decent, deep, thoughtful people with many ideas, with many different ideas, but to be, to be working in a field with other people who care about that really deeply. That has been, that's been a joy in my life. So when I go to bed at night, right, I don't wonder if what I am doing matters. Yeah. I never have to wonder that. And that, I think, is a blessing, right? I think I'm really lucky to be able to say that, and it's not lost on me. I'm really grateful for that. That's not to say that every day in my publishing life has been sweet, right? It's not that I have not had days where I'm banging my head or feeling sad about something or whatever. But in general, it's a beautiful way to move through the world.
I love that. And especially since you've written everything from picture books to middle grade books and YA, are you particularly drawn to like one end of the spectrum or another?
No, I haven't been yet. But okay. I think everything changes. Like, I think people evolve, right? Like my sense of the things that I'm interested in and the things that I want to say changes over time. So, when I wrote Yaqui Delgado, for example, and then later Burn, I had this very urgent feeling about writing the life of teenage Latinas, like all of those questions we have about our Latinidad, about our bodies, our own power, like how we relate to how the world sort of sees us and labels us, how we relate in our own families with the sometimes sort of dysfunctional ways that girls are regarded, right? And so that felt really urgent. Other times, right, I feel like I I have this very strong pull toward a sense of lightness and like goodness, and that's when I'm moving toward picture book, right? There's something about that magic that I want to capture of that age where like they're not ironic in any way, right? They're just open.
Mhm.
And right now, the world is not so open. It doesn't feel so open. So I'm really enjoying a lot of work in picture book, right? Because it helps me stay open. It helps me stay hopeful in the way that picture books are.
Mm.
And then with middle grade, the Medici series has just been really rewarding because I got to like create this zany family and this plucky girl, right? And she's kind of funny, and I've enjoyed like all my inner sarcastic nature is there, right? I just give it to Mercy, right? I don't have to actually be sarcastic myself except to my husband. But it's really kind of fun. So I don't know. There's not one or the other. I do wonder. Here's a question I have, and maybe other authors who might be listening will have thought about this. Like, I don't know, over time, does that change? Like, when I'm 70, am I going to want to write a YA novel? I don't know. And when I'm 70, is somebody going to want to read my YA novel? Or is that ageist, right? I don't know. So I am thinking about all that. I'm thinking now, right? Because I've been at this for a while now. Like, what does it take to endure in this career? Like the climb, when you first are trying to be an author, it's like a slog, and you've got your eye on the prize, and you want the agent, and you want this, and you're like working like a dog. And then those things happen, and they're beautiful. And then the question is, so how do I endure? What do I want my career to look like now? What do I want people to remember of my career when the time comes that I'm not doing it? Like all of those kinds of questions come up for me now, also as I'm moving through this space. But I do feel like I still have lots of stories in me. They don't, I mean, it's not like they're all popping in there at one time. I do sometimes, I have periods where I'm like, well, what am I going to write about now? I've got nothing. But then suddenly 2 ideas come and I'm like, there it is. So, I feel like I still have stories, but I think, I'm in flux as always. And I used to say I will never write a story for adults. I can't say that anymore. It's like, maybe I will one day write a novel for adults. It could happen. So I don't know. I think the thing is just like staying connected to telling the story that's in you, like in the vehicle that's the best for that story. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted.
We'll keep watching. We will keep on the lookout.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll keep on the lookout. So in that same vein, what would be your advice to aspiring authors and writers?
Yeah, that's funny that you say, because on Instagram, if those who are watching, I do these 1-minute writing tips. I don't know if you've seen it. I started this. I started fairly recently, like a couple months ago, I think. And it's 1 minute, and I talk for 1 minute on a specific thing I'm writing. Sometimes it'll be on foreshadowing, on tension, on characters, or whatever. And I'm going to keep them going as long as I have a minute's worth of things to say. So writers, if you're interested in advice and like technical things about writing, student writers, adult writers, you can go to IGTV. It's Meg's 1 minute writing tip. But in general, what I would say is the thing is that you persevere is the word. So this is a business that it's an art and a business, right? And it's tough. It's tough to get in. It's tough to stay and to continue to produce work at a certain quality. It's tough. I'm finding, right, to endure, right? It's going to be hard in different ways, at all different points. So you need to persevere, and to do that, you have to stay connected with why you write. You have to stay connected with what is it about your life in this, living your life in this way, taking this journey in this way, with words and emotion and connecting, creating this thing that you send out into the world, and that it connects with people based on their experience, right? Why is it that that feels important to you? What is it about that makes you feel good? And stay there, because if you start to swerve into the other things, like the really, just like really nitty gritty things, like I need an agent, I need that, it's easy to start to get bitter. It's easy to start to feel sad. It's easy to want to give up. But if you stay connected with why you're there, and stay with that, that helps you hold on when the things get hard. So that would be my best advice. Persevere, show up for yourself, hang in there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Absolutely. So, no author likes to essentially say who their favorite kid is, right? But but is there one of your books that has, say, an added level of connection for you, maybe based on the topic or the time that you wrote it, like you're most connected to?
Yeah, I feel like I've connected with different books for different reasons. I would say, if I'm being brutally honest, I would say that Yaqui Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass is the one that I connect to on a number of levels. I was writing that book. It's a book about bullying, about a girl who's being bullied. And very, very close, the first chapter is very, very close to what happened to me at junior high school 189. I still haven't forgiven you, 189, in the 7th grade, right? So I have that issue. And it was also a book that when I was writing it, Pitty is trying to figure out, like, her father is absent. Nobody will talk to her about her father, and so on. And there is a point in this book where she asks her mother, did he want me? And I still remember very clearly that day when I came to that, and I had to write that scene. And I wrote it white knuckle because I realized in that moment that was the question that I had for my mother about my own life and my own father. Forever, that I had never spoken or even really been conscious of. So that was a very painful moment. And as I was writing this novel, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, with advanced colon cancer. And she had made the decision that she was going to not receive treatment. So I remember, for example, that I was doing edits on Yaqui while my mom she had just come out of surgery and she was still sleeping, and I was in the chair doing edits as she was getting better. And, at the tail end of her life, when things got very hard, she was living with me. The book was moving through production. It was about to come out, and it had this raunchy title and all of that kind of stuff. So it ended up winning the Pura Belpré Award. And that, is not the Newbery, but it was such a meaningful award to me. Because it's the award of, like, of, like, my mother's generation, of everything that had come before. And so I think, like, that book for me always feels special, and it's, you know, challenged all the time because of its title, and it makes people nervous, and people don't like to say the title because they don't want to set people's hair on fire. But I stand by that book. And I remember so intimately the process of writing it, and all that was happening while it was coming into the world. So I think that book has that meaning for me. But the truth is that every one of them has connected with me in other ways. Like for me, Evelyn will always be in my mind the book that came out during COVID. This book about separation and losing our friends and how we stay connected with people we love. So when I think of this time, I can't even imagine what I'm going to think when I look back on this, or and what any of us is going to make, any sense that we're going to make of this collectively, this madness that we've lived through. But
absolutely.
But I am always going to think about that book, and of course, merci for just this opportunity to think about family and to recreate a family. To control it, to give her a great dad and a really good brother, and, you know, like all those things, and to create this family that I've grown to really love and think of as real, you know. So I don't know. I love them all, I guess.
They're all your babies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They are. You're probably like that in your bookshop, are you not? Don't you pick up one book and go, oh, I love it. No, I love this one. Like, so you can imagine how much worse it is for us. So
absolutely.
It's always hard for us because we do a lot of pop-up events. And so as we're setting out the table, and, you know, Kanika and I vet through the titles and the books that we want to carry in our book, because we want to make sure that they also support our vision, and the type of books that we want to put out into the world and make available to folks. And so it's always hard figuring out where the placement of the book should go, because they should all be on the front row. Tables not long. So they are all of our, like, but we're always like, but I really love this one, but I had to give the other one a chance. So yeah, they are all our baby.
Yeah, no, it's true. I get it. It's really hard. I hate when people ask me, well, tell me like 10 books that you love. And I'm thinking 10, I could give you 1,000 right now. It's horrible. Like when they say, we only want 5, your 5 top recommendations. I'm like, I start sweating bullets. I'm like, don't make me, because it's hard. And because there will be that 6th book that I'm like, but this was so good for this reason. So yeah, it's a tough thing, but you're book lovers, you know, we all have the same illness.
Absolutely.
And something about the children's books are just, I found myself in this space, obviously reading more children's books, right? And they just are so touching, you know, like as an adult reading them can still get the message, and then looking at the illustrations, and they're all just so impactful. So yeah, it's always hard to choose who gets the front and center on the table. So at some point we're gonna have to switch you and rotate you during the day.
Right.
I know. Well, that's a good idea. Or you need a carousel that's going around. That's what you got to invent. That's what you got to do. But I love, you know, that's the other thing. Adults reading children's books. I think that's really a cool thing. Like I came back to children's book when I became a teacher, right? I had gone away from it. But when I came back to teaching and I had to be in a classroom and bring books to kids, then it's like you discover the magic all over again. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience. And then you're reading it in a different way, right? You're reading it not only in the moment, the way that the child is or the reader is, but you're also thinking about like all the possibilities that this book has for, you know, adults and teachers and librarians. Like you're thinking so widely about how this book can make impact or help kids, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely felt that as a teacher, you know, just having that connection with kids and like seeing there are some books that you love, and kids might not love them as much, or the
Right.
ones where you're in love with them and they also like have that joy and like, let's read this one again, and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I found out, here's a funny thing. So I have all kinds of kids in my life, right? My kids are all grown, right? They're in their late 20s. I have one daughter who's 30, and this is who's this story is about. So that my daughter who's 30 is intellectually disabled, and for many years she was not a reader. And so she read when she was 13, she was still reading like Henry and Mudge books and things like that, very, very early readers. And that was really hard for me because I'm a person who lives in making words, right? And so my daughter was a big TV viewer at the time, the Disney Channel. And so she watched a lot of like, at that time, it was like Hannah Montana and the Zach, all of these shows. And we'd go to the bookstore, and there were the racks of those books, right? There they were. And it was like, she'd stand by them and just say, I want one of these books. And I would like buy it like against my will practically. It was like I was buying something terrible, right? And I'd push it across the thing, and I'd pay in secret and all that stuff. But you know what happened? She knew the stories from television, and then she started reading these books, and she could predict the story, and she could sound out the characters' names and the situation. And before you knew it, my daughter was reading and has become a reader, right? So she finished Mercy Suarez Can't Changes Gears. She subscribes to magazines. She's in a book club at her library called the Next Chapter Book Club, which is a book club for young people who are intellectually disabled. And, I found out that I had to get out of the way. Right. And as a teacher, I wish I had known that as well, that sometimes it's not about what you like, right? It's about what that child is interested in and wants to read. Like, get out of their way and just help them find what it is that they are wanting. And then it creates all new pathways. So yeah, that's what I found out as a teacher. But I love teaching. How long were you a teacher? Are you still currently a teacher?
So I work with teachers now, and I coach teachers, but I was in the classroom for 12 years. And mostly early elementary. So like pre-K through second, those were my heart.
I liked 5th and 6th grade. I liked that. And then later in high school, most people are scared of high school, who are, unless they're high school teachers. Like, you tell an elementary school teacher that they're going to teach in high school, they're like, you can't make me. But I loved them. High school kids are surprisingly like kindergarten students. That's all I'm going to say to you. They're funny and weird and all kinds of stuff like that too. So anyway, I do miss teaching. I have to say, I don't think I'd want to do it now. I think right now is so hard. And for any teacher out there, thank you, first of all, for everything that you are doing and have been doing. And, I'm thinking of all of them because it's really tough, this environment, right? But I loved it. I loved being in the midst of like their questions and their growing up and all the messiness of it. I think the thing that burned me out or that I didn't like was all the other stuff, the attendance sheet, the meeting, the da da da. Like, right. It wasn't the kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime I think about like challenges in education or schools, like, it's never the kids. It's the adults. Right. It's never the kids. Like, the kids are not the problem.
Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you. I think it's nice to know it hasn't changed. That's how I pretty much felt.
Absolutely. So can we expect any future Mercy Suarez adventures?
Yes, I just did it. I went on vacation and I sent my editor the final manuscript on what will be the final installment of the Mercy stories. It's called Mercy Suarez Plays It Cool. and she's in 8th grade. So the first book, she was in 6th grade. The second book that's out now, Merci Suarez Can't Dance, she's in 7th. And then next fall, she'll be in the 8th grade. And I had to bring that whole group of people, that whole arc, in for a safe landing. And that was really tricky, very rewarding in the end. And I like how it landed. But, you know, it felt like a big responsibility. You know, it needed to still have humor. It needed to, she's in the 8th grade, but the readers for it are still like 5th, 6th grade readers, right? And so there were a lot of things to consider. And in a series, like, it's always a question of keeping old characters and adding new characters and creating enough of a spark and different sort of events and plot lines that to keep the reader interested. So there was all of that, but yeah, and there were some hard events, right, that had to come forward. So that's how I felt when I turned it in. It was like, you know, I've done it, I think, you know, and so now it's in production. So we'll see, they're working on the design and all of that good stuff. And I, this morning, what I was doing is working on a manuscript for another picture book. So I'm hanging on to the light thing. I'm really feeling that urge right now. So I don't know when that will come out or what shape it's in really just yet, but that'll be coming on its heels as well.
Well, we can't wait.
Yeah, we're gonna keep watching. So we always ask our authors. So Kanika mentioned we always pick a theme of the month, right? And that's just how we add more books to our collection. It's just around themes. And so ending out September, our theme was cultural diversity. And so is there a word, a phrase, a quote of what cultural diversity means to you?
The word that comes to mind immediately is intersections, because I think we are so many things. Any one of us is so many things. We're so many people, we're so many identities inside of one person. And I think when I think of culture, the other word is that I want to celebrate it, not quiet it. It's something that we should celebrate and embrace and be happy to share and talk about. That's what I think.
That's good.
That is so beautiful. And I just want to say that we are so grateful for you today, sharing your stories, sharing your journey, and just coming on our platform. So we are so grateful to you today, Meg.
Thank you. The invitation was wonderful, and it's been so fun to be on here with you guys and chatting in every other way. And if I can help in any other way, you know where to find me. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in and who has watched tonight. I hope you have a beautiful evening.
Absolutely. And so how can people stay connected to you and make sure they're on the lookout for Meg Suarez and anything new that you have coming out?
All the new stuff. Well, of course, I can come to my website, megmedina.com. On Instagram, it's Meg Medina Books, and be following the writer's tips if you're authors. And, you know, I have all my socials. Meg_Medina is my handle on Twitter. So I'm throwing stuff there all the time. You can sign up for my newsletter. You know, there's all kinds of stuff. Sadly, I never run out of things to say. I think, you know, Mrs. Zuckerman, when I say I was a lot as a kid, I might still be a lot as an adult. I don't know. I think so. But anyway, that would be great if folks would follow me there. And please find my books in the bookstore and online bookstores, and in the library is always a great place too. The important thing is that you keep reading.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for inviting me. I really am excited to have been here.
Thank you so much. And we'll make sure that people have your handles and your website, and so they can continue to stay connected to you. Thank you so much. And like I said, or Vanessa said, that we are always having or out in our communities at pop-up bookshops and at bookstores, or schools having book fairs and things like that. So we are actually going to be, Vanessa will be in Atlanta tomorrow at First Fridays at the Cascade Farmers Market. So that's in the heart of Cascade Heights, 2407 Cascade Road. And she'll be there with your favorite titles. She'll be there with Evelyn Del Rey is Moving Away. So go and find her if you're in the Atlanta area from 4 to 8 tomorrow. Again, that's Cascade Farmers Market. And then if you're in the New York area, I will be at the Brooklyn Booze and Boobs pop-up shop, which is in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So you can find me at 832 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. And that's on Saturday, on October 2nd from 3 to 9 p.m. So come on out. Good causes. You can find your Meg Medina books with us. And also find us on our website, www.storiesofacolorfulworld.com, and sign up for our newsletter. So tomorrow starts October, so we'll have a new theme of the month. So go ahead and sign up for our newsletter and also shop with us in many of our book collections. So that's www.storiesofacolorfulworld.com. And thank you again, Meg.
My pleasure.
It
was wonderful to be here.
And everyone, will see you all next week. Thank you so much.